right, so I'm gonna do a kind of like YouTube intro thing. That way we can do it smoothly.
Got it.
Jerk around, and then it also would help if I had the questions pulled up. I'm a professional, by the way. So I
All
am on
right.
a journey to get to know as many Dead by Daylight creators as I possibly can. So I started this little YouTube series called Interviews or Conversations by Deadlight, whichever title I decide to land on next time. And today I am interviewing the wonderful Lily Pie 101. Lily, you want to introduce yourself for people who might not know who you are?
Hi, everybody. I am obviously a Dead by Daylight content creator. I'm a full-time streamer as well. I have about 8,000 hours in the game currently, and I primarily play Survivor, but I feel like I can play Killer whenever needed. But I'm also a Fog Whisperer.
And that's actually one of my favorite parts about this is we haven't had a fog whisperer before. So for everybody who doesn't know how this works, I have written 10 questions and then I pulled 10 questions from the community. Although I actually pulled eight because there was a lot of troll questions for some reason. So we ended up getting 8 questions from the community. So I don't want to take too
Mhm.
much of your time. So we'll go ahead and jump into this. The first question I have is, what was your initial reaction to getting the message that you made it into the Fog Whisperer program?
Ooh, that's a really interesting one because at the time, like for me, I was really in love with DBD. Like I played it so much. I used to play DBD 12 hours a day. Not even joking. And so when they said that they wanted me to be a fog whisperer, I was honestly in disbelief at first because it started with like very small like crossover promotions and whatnot, and they were like handing out codes for me to give out on stream and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that's just like a cool thing, you know? They're just this is something that they probably do with like every other content creator when they get the chance to. Okay, but then when I was approached for it, I was like, wait, really? And the process of onboarding like took a little while, and it took a while for me to like hold on to that news, but the fact that I couldn't spill the beans on it was nothing short of incredible. I was really really excited.
So you literally you couldn't tell anybody like Will or like
No,
really
no, no,
like
no, no, not at all. And so for me at the time, like I didn't like at this time, I felt like I knew people in like the DBD community, of course, but when I first started playing DBD, I didn't really know anybody, and so like I was kind of just doing my own thing and really just kind of like cultivating my own community. I did watch streamers, of course, but I never really like heavily interacted with the community like that much at the point. So
oh okay. How did they reach out to you? Email or Twitter, Messenger Pigeon or
email actually, email. And it was also just kind of interesting to me because for a very long time I did have, in like a lot of my titles and everything else, oh, well, into the fog, that kind of thing. I would put it on like my Twitter posts, my Twitch channel and stuff. But then I was like, well, I don't think I'm ever gonna really get it. And so I kind of just stopped doing it for a very long time. And then when I started to realize, they never have any sort of application for this or whatever open,
Mhm.
yeah, I was like, yeah, this is definitely not happening. I'm just like, take it out of the title, Lily. But getting the email and then having like the onboarding process and everything, really cool.
That's good. What drew you to DBD initially and what's kept you going like literally all this time? Because I've seen some of your older clips. You've been playing this game a long time.
Yeah, I have actually. So it's actually funny. I never really used Twitch like that or anything else. But my ex at the time was actually a streamer and he was gifted the game to play it. And I remember, I was just cleaning our house at the time, and as I was walking around, I was hearing some of the audio from his stream, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, why do I hear moaning? What is that? And so I realized he was playing a different like new game on stream, and I was like, "What is this?" And I remember at the time, I think he was playing Laurie Strode, and he was going against Ghostface. And I saw like the Ghostface character pick up this Laurie Strode, and I was like, "What is this? She just got picked up by the butt. This game is literally so silly. Like, what is this? Like, oh my god." And then I started watching his streams like more and more, of course, as a moderator and whatnot. And then I remember I saw the spirit and I thought her lore and everything was really cool. And then I started to research a little bit more about DBD. And this was when I was like, oh, wow. So this game is massive, actually. And it's still growing. They have all sorts of cool stuff in it. And it's horror, too. But the spirit's character was really what drew it to me. Um, And then I remember I actually had one of his viewers gift me the game, and the first DLC that they gifted me was the Spirit DLC that also came with Adam Francis. And so when I first started out playing, I played mostly killer because I was very, very scared to play Survivor by myself.
I
And I
feel
didn't
that.
really want to play with, I didn't actually really have anybody to play with because
Mhm.
I didn't really know anything about DVD at the time. I was just like, hey, they've got cool stuff going on in this game. I want to play it. That's all.
And now you're probably one of the most famous Survivor mains in the community at this point.
Ooh, when you attach Survivor main to it, that that's got a lot of, I feels like a negative connotation.
I don't
Like I'm
I
so
so I'm actually gonna like confess that like when I first started seeing your content or your tweets, I was like, wow, she's really annoying Survivor main. But then like after I started like watching more of your stuff, I was like, oh, she's actually cool. We just have a lot of disagreements. And then like as I got more experienced at the game, I started agreeing with more stuff you were saying. But yeah, I
Mhm.
used to think your takes were infuriating. I used to be one of those die-hard killer mains where like survivors were just overpowered and like not, you know what I mean? Like I played nothing but killer for the first 400 hours I played this game.
Honestly, you know what? That makes a lot of sense because I can tell you right now, I used to be like a lot worse. But if I'm being honest, I feel like everybody goes through a phase of DBD like that. I myself have also had one of those phases as well. But I feel like the longer, you play DBD, the more, situated you get with things and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not that bad. And I do feel like with gaming in general, it's easy to like let the gamer rage out, of course. I'm speaking from experience, even outside of DBD. I used to play a lot of fighting games, and if you know anything about fighting games in the
Oh
communities,
yeah.
yeah, okay, you get it. And so it can get really nasty at time and really hectic, but I've really come a long way with gaming and like, trying to control like, oh, how frustrated I get and whatnot. But there are definitely people in the community where, I've seen some of the things that they said and I'm like, okay, well, you're really annoying. But then, but then when I watch their content, of course, it's like, you know what, this person is really good and their gameplay or like how they feel about a game has
Mhm.
nothing to do with who they are as a person. They're
Yeah.
lovely as a person,
Yeah.
you know?
I actually I made a video recently called Separate the Player from the Main where and I
Mhm.
talked in that video about how the Dead by Daylight community sometimes seems to just take disagreements way too fucking personally.
Mhm.
Where it's like, "Oh, you disagree with my take about a video game? Well, then you are obviously awful and I don't like you." And I'm just like, that's a little far. I'm mutuals with quite a few people that I don't agree with. So you were telling a story about how you got into Dead by Daylight. Was Dead by Daylight why you started streaming?
Actually, yes and no. So initially when I first started playing DBD, this was right around the time when I was traveling back to America, to process my visa to live overseas and whatnot. And so at the time, I was staying in New York. I didn't really have a lot of stuff to do. And I was watching, like I said, my ex's stream before I was like getting ready for my big trip and stuff. And of course, when I was in the United States, I was moderating while I was waiting for my visa. But because I had nothing to do, I just started playing DVD like constantly over and over again. But I had a really bad laptop at the time, so I couldn't really stream it or anything. And I thought about getting into streaming more because I was like, okay, well, why not? I have free time. I really enjoy video games. But streaming was something very new to me as a whole. And I actually thought that streaming was quite weird, but because it was what my ex was doing at the time, of course, I was trying to be supportive as a partner.
Right.
But then when my visa finally got processed, I was like, okay, awesome. I'm going to start like a regular job and stuff, and maybe I'll stream every now and then. But that's right around when COVID happened. I started playing DVD November 2019, waiting around for the visa, playing every single day, like 12 hours a day, because bored. And then when my visa got processed in December 2019, I flew back to the UK and I was ready to start working. But then, as you know, March 2020 was around a lot of stuff started shutting down due to COVID. And so being at home, put out of, working as often, I was, again, like in the same predicament, very bored. And then they were talking about, all the jobs closing down in restaurants. And I literally scoffed at it because I was like, whatever. Like it's just some silly virus. It's gonna go away in about a
Yeah.
few weeks.
I did the
And
same
then
thing.
no, exactly, because at the time, a lot of this COVID nonsense that was arising was so new to me. I've never like had anything like that in my life before
Hmm.
pop up or restrict me like that. But it actually did turn out that COVID shut down a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, I did lose a lot of my hours for my job and everything. And so I started streaming to, make up with a lot of anxiety of being cooped up in the house because the UK laws are actually a lot stricter for households, and they were handing out a lot of fines and everything else.
Hmm.
And on top of that, because I couldn't work, being in the house all day, for me, I have to be doing something. Like I have to keep myself busy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just ramp up the streaming stuff just to pass time. But it was also a way for me to start playing more Survivor as well because I was scared. I would just say, hey, like, come play with me, and we can like learn and grow together and get better. And I was just like trying to create a little community out of that of people that just didn't really want to play alone. And that's exactly how my community started. Just people trying to like help each other out because like I said, I was very, very scared of playing Survivor by myself.
Hmm. No, I have, yeah, no, so we started streaming around the same time then because I started streaming because of COVID. So
Mhm.
we got that stimulus check, that pissant, $1,200 stimulus check. But at the time, I was working at the casino, and so I had a lot of money saved up. So I was like, I'm gonna finally buy a PC. Like this is the first like actual PC I've ever owned in my entire life. Like I've only owned like laptops and shit up until this point. So I
Mhm.
bought it, and I was like, I started with Apex Legends. And I was like, I'm gonna start streaming. So it was about that time. I think my stream anniversary is sometime in March,
Mhm.
something like that.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, like, I had never really had a PC either, and I got a PC done because I got a PC made because even before, like, I even thought about streaming. I actually worked on a lot of different 3D mods and whatnot for different games, and it's just a lot of bunch of like, nerdy stuff as well. And so I just wanted a PC, to
Hmm.
work on stuff like that in my free time outside of my job.
That's cool. So with that in mind, if you had to start your content journey over like tomorrow with all the knowledge you had now, you just had to start from scratch, zero across the board, what would
Mhm.
you do differently?
Ooh, this one is like a very hard one for me, but ignore a lot of comments and like a lot of the things that I face. So for me, I feel like I do get perceived online a lot differently. I'm perceived a lot of the time, as much more aggressive than I actually am. And this is like true for a lot of people, but especially because, I'm a lady.
Yeah.
But there's also other factors into it, like my race as well.
Hmm.
Because I've had a lot of comments come up based off of that, or I've got a lot of people that even if, they disagree with me, they will bring in factors like that
Yeah.
because of, what I look like or, who I am, etc., like my identity, which is very weird. But
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
would say ignore that stuff because even if people are like saying some of the most out of pocket, wild things to me, basically, I've realized a lot of people will say those things. And then when I retaliate and say something like, okay, well, hey, I hate you. You're weird. Fuck off. They're going to
Hmm.
cut it out and be like, oh, well, look at what she just said.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And then people aren't going to look at like, oh, well, what did you do to like, have that done? And people already have like a
Yeah.
bias in their head
Oh yeah.
because of, maybe an opinion they didn't like, or maybe just because of what you look like or what you identify as, and then they're
Yeah.
going to take that and they're going to run with it. And so just don't give them the ammo. Like if I could really like take that and, start over again, 1000%, that would be the first thing that I'd have to like get down pat.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually like that's one of the things that's like really difficult for me because like not only am I a non-binary creator, I'm also fat, and I've been fat
Wait,
for.
really? I'm sorry, I did not know you were non-binary. Oh my goodness.
I am. I use they them pronouns, and I'm also fat, and I've been fat for a long time, and so
Mhm.
like every single video I post is just transphobia and fat phobia. Like you get it all. I get it all the time. And like I try to explain because like people are always like, just ignore it. And I'm like, when you get it every fucking day, dude, it gets infuriating and it's so hard to just ignore it. Like I think you were actually talking about that on your stream earlier today, when that fucking weirdo came into your chat and said that like very out of pocket. I
Yeah.
was fucking I was fucking playing Dead by Daylight on my main monitor and you started laughing, so I looked over to see what it was and I saw the message. I was like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Honestly, I feel like I've also come a very long way to just try to like laugh that kind of stuff off in general. I know it's very, weird that people say those kinds of things or do those kind of things, but you know, there's really no point in trying to sit there and do anything with those people. They already don't like you.
mhm.
They're like the chances of them changing their mind about liking you are slim to none. And a lot of them are also just gonna argue in bad faith.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people that initiate a conversation and are like, "Oh, well, what about this scenario?" It's purely in bad faith, you know? They
Yeah.
don't wanna believe you, they don't wanna listen to you, they don't care what you have to say. And so your best bet is to just mute, block, or just even even if you can stand it, be nice back to them. Even when I get really bad comments at times, I actually will just sit there and be like, "Hey, thanks for the engagement."
Yeah.
And that really pisses them off, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it makes it so that those people are like, "Oh, well, obviously I can't really fuck with her," or, "Okay, well, I can't really get anything, I can't do anything here." And so they'll probably just kinda like naturally fuck off on their own. And so
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's so hard to not feed the trolls because like for me, I had to learn to just start ignoring YouTube comments because I get every single video I post gets like hundreds of comments minimum, and so like I end up seeing just like some truly atrocious shit. I ban the people who are like obviously being bigoted and stuff like that, but like I used to like respond. I had to respond to every single one of them, and eventually it was just you just learn to deal with it.
No,
Um,
absolutely. And you do, and it is kind of a sad thing, especially for marginalized creators, but you know, given what quality traits like you have, those people are not going to like you anyways. And so trying to like fight fire with fire, it won't go anywhere with them sadly. And I really do hate to say that because it really should be a lot simpler than just ignore them, mute them, block them, or just, smile in their face.
right.
But it's not. I
Yeah.
wish it was, but it's really not.
Yeah. For sure. Um. So, do you think that Dead by I know this might be hard to answer as a fog whisperer, but do you think that Dead by Daylight has like extreme longevity? Like, do we have another 8 years left, or do you think it's about time for them to start doing some major overhauls to the game to update it?
I would say yes and no. I think right now the thing that makes DBD like definitely one of its own is the fact that DBD was given so many great chances very early on, which kind of solidified its success.
Hmm.
The amount of licenses that they have will make even some of the most diehard fans give DBD a chance, like legitimately, whether that be through them playing some of their favorite, licensed survivors or licensed killers, that kind of thing. But I think right now, a lot of the people that once played DBD, I think a lot of them, veterans just don't really see the appeal in it anymore. But
Hmm.
DBD is bringing in a lot of people, every single month, like every single year. Every 3 months, new content is released. And the fact that a good majority of it can be licensed as well. Like,
Hmm.
look at the entire roster that we have right now. I just don't see DBD going anywhere anytime soon. And if it did, something would have to be like really, really wrong. But I just don't see that happening. Although I do think that veterans may be suffering a little bit in the process at times.
Yeah. I mostly agree. I think my biggest problem is I feel like there needs to be like they need to start looking at some core updates just because there's only so many ways you can say you get faster with this perk or you blind the killer with this perk or you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I feel because we're at what 307 or 30 perks, something like
I
that.
feel like I feel like it's a little bit closer. I wanna say 230, 240. But either way, anything over 100, of course, is like absolutely like
Yeah.
wild. I know DVD's been out for about 8 years and whatnot, but
Yeah. Oh,
still,
it's daunting. You
Yeah, it is, especially as a newer player. Like if somebody were to like get introduced to DVD and you know, try to say, "Hey, like I found this new game. I'm really gonna try to play it." Of course, I'm gonna encourage them because I do think the DVD is fun, but at the same time, very much so, good luck. There's a
Mhm.
lot to learn in this game on both sides.
Yeah, it's like when I first started, I started during the Knights PTB, and when I finally got people who were coming in and trying to help me learn the game, they would just start saying perk names, and I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why is every corner I turn a new perk activating somewhere? Like, what do you mean?"
I think that's something that DBD would also like really benefit from as well. More in-depth tutorials, especially
Hmm.
like outside or like external knowledge. Of course, there are many great DBD YouTubers. Some of my favorites like Ots. Um, and what is it? There's a very old YouTuber that I used to watch back in 2019, 2020. His name was Pain Relievers. Loved
Hmm.
his content so much, but also Choi brings up a lot of good balanced discussions. Those are some few, to name.
Yeah.
But either way, I feel like a lot of the resources that they provide, especially the amount of dedication that goes into some of their content, definitely deserves, a mention from DBD. And I could definitely see it featured in game or,
Yeah.
more in depth of a tutorial because with 3 months, every 3 months, new content arriving,
Hmm.
it may introduce new mechanics as well as perks, you know?
It's kind of I've been making this comparison since I came to Dead by Daylight. It's kind of like getting into a trading card game. There's there's a long history of shit you have to learn, and so they definitely need to update the new player experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like one tutorial alone is never gonna cover it. And like
Right.
I said, they have very, very dedicated content creators. So the resources are already there.
Yeah, they just need to reach out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What's been your favorite part of being a content creator?
I honestly think my favorite part of being a content creator is being able to meet new people and just kind of have somebody there as company. In real life, I'm very much so an extrovert. I've loved traveling since I was young. I've loved trying new experiences. Like, I'm the type of person to just strike up a conversation with somebody I've literally just met, you know?
Hmm.
I'm extroverted in the sense that I kind of just go wherever my mind really takes me. Like if I see a place, I'll try it on a whim. If I see something that I want to do, I'll do it. I don't really like sometimes of course I do have a plan for like life and everything else, but a lot of the things I like to do, I'm very extroverted about. And so being able to like connect with so many different people from so many different parts of the world, from so many different backgrounds, who also have, different influxes of knowledge is nothing short of like kind of like wild to me. The internet makes
Hmm.
it all possible, but it's also the fact that we all have a common denominator. A lot of us are gamers. But even outside of us being gamers, some of us are artists, or some of us are musicians, or some of us have other really cool niche hobbies like knitting and whatnot. And
Right.
I feel like there's something almost every single day that I learn that's new, which is really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that is a unique answer. I don't think I've ever heard that one before. No, because normally people are like, oh, I like making friends or I like doing this, and no one's ever really went that in depth before. Me personally, I just like making people laugh. That's why I do nothing but tell dick jokes at 30 years old.
But like I said, I just really enjoy being more of a well-rounded person. Like I'm very curious about the lives of other people and what it's like from another POV. Like I'm just by nature a very curious person, and so
Hmm.
even if like the simplest thought of something pops up in my head, I can find myself watching a video essay on something like, you know, what is it, marine biology or something,
Yeah, for sure.
just because.
For sure. Who's been your biggest inspiration throughout the years? Just in general.
Hmm. Let me see. I mean, does it necessarily have to be a content creator?
No, just in general.
Well, in general, I would have to say my grandmother. My grandmother has been like a very big focal point for my life. And I feel like she was one of the more important figures. Growing up, I didn't really have that great of a relationship with my mom before she passed, in general, of course. And so my perspective on, a lot of things in life were very skewed. But regardless of how I felt about certain things, my grandma always encouraged me to, be resilient towards whatever life put me through, but also to see the good in people no matter what as well. And so, because she's taught me a lot of those different things, I feel like I try to carry those traits, and I feel like I try to, be the light in somebody's life that somebody else may not have, just the same as she was to me.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds like maybe a little corny or cliche, but I do genuinely believe it, because there are plenty of times when I, again, don't necessarily agree with somebody, but, I've still taken the time and the effort to try to educate somebody, and I've still taken the time and the effort, to try to sit there and make sure that somebody's on the right path and go out of my way to spend time with people, you know, because I want to make sure that that person is okay, that kind of thing. Like I said, outside of being, a curious person, I'm also a very empathetic person as well. I really do care about people, whether the relationship that I have with them is parasocial or not. I think that as humans, there are a lot of different things that we, again, may not agree on. There are a lot of different things that we may like and dislike, etc. But I feel like being able to have, that relatability to another person, like human to human, is very, very valuable. And I feel like that's something we don't see enough in general in society, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a strong lack of empathy out there in the world, and I would like to help fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely get that. I've always said that the default should be respect and caring instead of making people earn your respect and your love and your understanding. I always felt like that should be the default and the opposite should
Mhm.
be true. They should have to earn disrespect through their actions. So I definitely get that. And I've never really brought into the whole, oh, this is corny. Like, I think positive outlooks on life are great. I wish I had a more positive outlook, to be honest with you.
And I
Um,
won't I won't lie, because of some of the hardships that I've been through in life. Sometimes it is like I said, sometimes it's hard to ignore, negative comments or trolls and things like that. But oftentimes I do find myself, thinking, what would grandma do? Or is this really how I want to treat people? Or like, what does it really mean to harbor this negativity? That
yeah,
kind of thing.
for sure.
So those kinds of things I really like to think about, and I do try to be a better person at the very end of the day. I'm all
Okay.
ready.
So, the question before before my entire computer decided it was just going to disconnect the microphone and all sorts of other shit is, do you think Dead by Daylight would be better with a ranked mode? And if it had one, would you play it?
I think that DBD right now could definitely benefit from a ranked mode. I feel like a lot of the player base is split between wanting to play like, very casual, but some also wanting to play for like a little bit of a competitive edge. And I think there's nothing wrong with either. I think both play styles, however you decide to play, but like nothing's really like off limit in games except for when people are like, purposefully bleeding out or, doing like the kind of odd humping thing. I
Hmm.
think outside of that, those things, like everything else, kind of just goes. I think a lot of other gameplay styles, of course, can be boring, but you know, those are
Right.
always going to exist as long as DBD is there.
Yeah.
But I think that a ranked mode would be amazing for the people that actually want to try to push their skills, and it would also be with another group of people that are also wanting to test their skills. Because if you're wanting to test your skills, I feel like having, all consenting parties, actually try would be nice.
Right.
Otherwise, everybody else doesn't really come equipped, and then it's not really like that much of a challenge because you're probably going to be stomping people that are unsuspecting, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so it's the reason why I don't like really care that much for like escape streaks or like win streaks and whatnot, because again, that person has no idea that you're even attempting it.
Right.
But if we did have a ranked mode, people would be like, okay, yeah, this is what you're going for, or like you want a competitive play style. Awesome. But I also just think that MMR is not the healthiest for the game anyways. So
See, I think MMR is healthy for all games just because of the new player experience, but I also think
Mhm.
that in order for it to be healthy, it needs to work properly.
Hmm.
And that's Dead by Daylight's biggest issue is that I as a 1300-hour player should not be playing against people who just downloaded the game yesterday. And
No, absolutely.
sometimes like that's my problem with MMRs. Like if I'm playing Nurse, because like I play to win. I'm one of those people that like actually tries to win like vast majority of my games just because I like winning. And I feel
Hmm.
so bad when I'm playing against a survivor and they're just lost. They have no idea what they're doing. Like they're double vaulting a safe pallet and stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, this is I I'm just like, brother, you need to I feel bad. And then I check their profile and it's like 25 hours. And I'm like,
Oh,
that's
that's not.
yeah, that shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be doing that.
No, absolutely. That's something that is very discouraging, especially as a newer player. I could imagine if I were to get matched up against somebody that had, quadruple, and more my
Hmm.
hours, I would feel very upset. And, like I said, discouraged, which I think a lot of the player base experiences, whether they play killer or survivor.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I was a newer player, sometimes I would come against people and it'd be like, I don't think I should be playing against you. Like when I was playing, when I was, I think my first like 30, 40 hours, I played against a Leon which surprisingly enough was good at the game. I played against a Leon who was able to loot me at an unsafe pallet for like probably 35 seconds on an
Oh,
unsafe
wow.
yeah, on an unsafe pallet, and I just didn't because I didn't
Hmm.
know what to do. I don't know how to play unsafe pallets back then. And so it was just like the fact he was able to do that, especially looking back at what I know now, the fact he was able to do that, he shouldn't have been able to do that against me. You know what I
No,
mean?
absolutely. And I have some of the same issues with MMR at the moment where it just seems it's not really working. Because even in some of my survivor lobbies, where I know for certain my MMR could or should be a certain point because, I'm a content creator. I have enough experience under my belt. And, I know what I'm doing in my games to the point where I should at least be a certain amount.
Mhm.
However, I am getting people that have legitimately 500 hours or less if I play
Mhm.
solo queue, which is
Yeah.
very odd. I went to go check the Steve's prestige, and I went to check his hours actually because I saw he was 0 prestige. And then I noticed he had about what 45 hours, which was very
Jesus.
just very interesting. And then it turns out in the lobby, as soon as I got back from viewing his profile, he said, "Huh, and matchmaking in this game works. What a joke." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
That actually leads pretty well into my next question, surprisingly. So when I play Survivor, I get so fucking tilted.
Mhm.
Especially like last night, for example, it felt like every single one of my teammates were kindergartners shoving crayons up their nose, and every single killer I was
Aw.
facing was trying to be the next Momo seventh. And so
Oh,
I get
wow.
I get tilted. How are you a Survivor main? I don't understand how to be a Survivor main because I get so mad when I play Survivor.
Honestly, the thing that's keeping me sane is the fact that I sit there and I play with other people. That's the thing. Like, I play with other people a lot of the time, like my friends, or, I'll have open lobbies for my Twitch and TikTok subs. But I also sit there and I like to engage in like good conversations in the chat that kind of like takes me, away from whatever I'm feeling. And
Hmm.
the thing is, I would play more killer, but I feel like killer feels very like brain off. I feel like killer feels very boring a lot of the time. And on top of that, my audience is primarily built around survivor players anyways. But I gotta have a really bad day for me to go hop on killer for a few hours. Otherwise, I would just play for like challenges and archives and whatnot, maybe off stream, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I can definitely understand people getting upset, not even just with like teammates, but also killers as well.
Hmm.
But I've just kind of learned that's just kind of what DBD is now a lot.
Yeah. I'd see, and we're the opposite because for me, killer is like incredibly intense, and sometimes it's frustrating as well. But like, because I got to keep track of my stuff. I got to keep track of what the survivors are doing. I got to keep track of what every single generator is at.
Hmm.
I love that. I love the intensity. That's what some people are like. Some people tell me like they get too stressed playing killer, but I love the intensity of having to keep track of all that stuff. But on Survivor, I just like I don't know. I sometimes I feel so helpless. Like, what do I do here? Oh, I just die? Oh, okay.
No, I think I can understand that because I definitely feel like with DBD's killer, it is a lot more tense. Anytime you make some sort of like screw up, it is definitely a lot of the time, no one else to really blame, but you also have to deal with the fact that, you're playing against four other people and, the whole team could be like really amazing. And so I do think like killer can be stressful, of course. But when I say that killer is boring, typically I'd say it's boring because I feel like the overarching thing with DBD a lot of the time is just gens. Whenever I'm playing, I don't notice very many people that are like crazy, crazy good at chase. Of course, I do have people that are, good at chase,
Yeah.
of course, but even when I see people with like higher hours and whatnot, chase isn't really incentivized in DBD, I feel like. So it's very rare that you run into a lot of people that are like juicers.
Right.
I feel like. I think a lot of the standard gameplay is just a lot of people will split up on gens and be efficient.
Right.
Like that's kind of just it.
Yep. So last couple of questions mostly have to do with being a successful content creator, because I don't think anybody could argue that you are unsuccessful. I think that would just be sticking their head in the sand. So the first of the last two questions is, does the pressure of not only being a fog whisperer but also a successful person ever like get to you? Like, is there ever this feeling like there's just too many eyes on you? And how do you deal with that if it does?
I've actually felt like that for a while because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to continue content creation. I'm very grateful because content creation has, helped me move out, of my dad's house. And when I came back to America and whatnot after living overseas, it was able to like really help me and my communities come through in plenty of ways. But I also do other content creation now as well. I do a lot of art and cosplay and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I enjoy having people, appreciate what I do as an art form, of course, not just like literal art, but also, costume and makeup and, filming and getting details down, things like that.
Right.
But I will say at one point, I just kind of got tired of it, where when I would go on like vacation and whatnot, I could just literally forget my phone and I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was so happy to just, like, not worry about answering another business email or sitting down on a call or, like, hurrying and responding to somebody or, editing videos. Because even as a content creator, I feel like all levels of content creator, whether you feel like you're successful or not, you know, definitively, even outside of what you actually do as the content creation, you will still be working even outside of your actual job.
Right.
Like the grind and the work doesn't really stop, you know?
Yeah.
But despite me feeling that way, um, I don't know, I just kind of like took a break, from joking around with people as much and whatnot. And again, because I'm an extroverted person, I'm very, I'm very open about talking about my life. I'm very open about talking about, things that I go through and everything else. I get excited to share different things. But I remember at one point I was on the Twitch front page and people were asking like very invasive questions. And I was like, "Hey, I'm open, but I'm not that
Yeah.
open. Like
Yeah.
this is a bit much. Can you stop?"
Right.
And then somebody just straight up told me, "Well, that's what you get for wanting to be a streamer. You don't have the right to privacy." And it made me think, like, is this something that I really want? If it only gets worse from here, is this something that I really want to continue?
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy I said yes now, but back then it really wanted to make me like shut out a lot of people,
Right.
you know? Because like I said, again, I try to be parasocial, but by being an extrovert by nature, I love to joke around with people. I love, helping people, everything else.
Right.
It just made me not want to do any of that stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided I wasn't gonna let a couple of bad apples, ruin the whole bunch. And I'm happy I didn't, of course.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to take time to decompress and not be online as often. So
I think that's probably like the scariest thing, because like for me personally as a content creator, I have as a small content creator, I have this like really grind mentality mindset, and it's so
Hmm.
difficult for me to like take time to like not work on stuff. Like you even brought it up whenever I went into one of your streams where I said I was editing. You're like, you're always editing, and the truth is I am. I'm always writing, I'm always editing, I'm always scheduling, I'm always like I don't from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I just don't stop. And I wonder if when I do hit, you know, your level of success, if I'm going to be able to stop, because I never want the momentum to die. Um, but I guess my last question before we get into the community section is, do you we talked a little bit about this earlier,
Hmm.
as not only as a successful content creator, but also as a successful black woman, you face a lot of ignorance and hatred. And so my question is more for the other black women out there who are looking to get into this space and into this. What is your advice to them before they get to your level? What they need to start working on in order to deal with what is undoubtedly going to come their way because of how shit this world is.
Honestly, the best way that you can prepare yourself is up your security, know what you're doing, etc. This is such like a difficult thing for me to talk about, but even before I really started streaming, I actually used to have a stalker. I was in the background of one of my ex's streams, and this person wanted to like 1v1 my ex in a game. But when they joined, they had like a very racist username because they
Mm-hmm.
saw me in the background. And when they saw me in the background, they continued with their racism. And of course, my ex kicked him and was like, hey, man, that's not cool.
Right.
But then they proceeded to stalk me for years and years. I'm talking 700 plus accounts. I couldn't even enjoy certain games that I liked at sometimes because they would create multiple bot accounts to
Mm-hmm.
just start vote kicking me in games. This happened, I believe it was in TF2, and I believe it also happened in Rainbow Six Siege as well. Because I used to play a lot of Rainbow Six Siege. They also would create different Steam accounts to harass me, and one of them at one point was like literally slur and then slayer, and their bio was like, "Hey, go report my main," and then it was a link to my account.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, the Twitch chat messages before Twitch had a huge overhaul.
Yeah.
They would come in with so many accounts, and the usernames would be like, I'm gonna like burn you, I'm gonna like shoot you, I'm gonna like lynch or hang you, I'm gonna shoot you for being like a hard ER,
Yeah.
that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they would also have other people join in on it. And so, did it discourage me? Absolutely. It made me terrified. But my one saving grace was finding other people that were like me. That's exactly what saved me and what made me feel a lot more comfortable. There was a group called Black Girl Gamers that actually really helped me out. I was a part of them for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also Sisters of the Fog, which is still around, that I'm still a part of. In our Discord, I was just talking about it today. We actually have a section where we share groups of people that have come by and harassed us on the basis of like racism and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And we take time to, help each other share ban lists and everything else from those racist people. But having a good support system, knowing what buttons to hit when maybe your Discord's being raided or when your channel's being raided is amazing. But literally preparing yourself with this kind of knowledge, as well as, this sounds scary, but part of being a content creator and like having your life online, people are going to try to dox you as well.
Oh yeah.
So if you do decide to like create any sort of like domain, etc., that can be traced back to you, make sure you have protections on it. Make sure that you scrub all of your info off of the internet and clean up your socials of any personal information if you've decided to turn a personal account into, a business account or brand account,
Right.
all of that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And even then, I took it a step further. I deleted all of my personal socials. I permanently deleted them a while back. because I was just uncomfortable of the thought of people finding me or like my family, etc., and trying to get them involved. Like, I don't have anything to hide, of course, but I have, a deep respect for my family and also my dad. I don't want to involve them in something that just because somebody has fucking internet beef with me.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things literally have started because somebody disagrees with me. And then they see that, oh, well, she's this and this. Let me attack her on that basis. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of things get escalated just because of what I am, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, which really sucks. But at the same time, it's the internet. Racism is nothing new, but preparing yourself 1,000%, you got to do it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's, and that story is actually, that hits close to home for me. I was in an Aaron Duke video, back
No, I
in,
saw.
so you
Oh,
saw
I
that
saw.
video.
I
Um,
did.
so that video, there's this guy who has this like unhealthy hate boner for Aaron. And anytime Aaron like goes to support a trans creator, which I fall under
Aaron,
the umbrella of.
like, it is so weird because he's literally bi.
Hmm.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So anytime Aaron supports a trans creator, this dude would um harass those creators. And this dude harassed me for 6 months straight. Where if I streamed, he would follow bot me with a bunch of like provocative names, transphobic names that made me look like tried to make me look like a pedophile. He would spam discords that I was in with like pictures from my Instagram, and like, again, like bestiality and like pedophilic quotes and stuff like that. And when you were talking about how it was demoralizing and you felt like you could give up, I almost did. It
Hmm.
was, and then eventually I found a verification bot for my Discord, and eventually, he left because I just stopped streaming and everything, and now Twitch. If you're out there and you're a streamer, Twitch now has the ability to limit who can follow you based on their account's age. I have that shit set to the count has to be a month old. I am never dealing with that shit ever again. But the idea of upping your security preemptively is a great idea.
No, absolutely. And I have my Discord set up the exact same way because aside from, some of the harassment on the other platforms, and I'm talking about those 700 accounts,
Hmm.
um, a lot of those were also through Discord. And because I was newer at Discord, I really didn't know like how to figure some of this stuff out. And I used to have my Discord literally spammed with gore and
Hmm.
hate rated in the middle of the night
Yep.
with like some of the most disgusting, racist, and deeply misogynistic like shit that I could like think of in the back of my mind.
And it's
Like
always in the
shit.
middle of the night.
Yeah, I know. Like they literally coordinated. It's so weird. But that kind of stuff used to invade my Discord, and then I'd have to clean it up all in the morning and whatnot. And just it was mortifying to look at, the fact that somebody could just hate me so much. And the fact that at this point I hadn't even said anything to the guy other
Yeah.
than that guy has a racist name. It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, ew, so cringe to be racist.
Yeah. It's like, my bad for
And
existing, bro.
no, like quite literally that. And the fact that the existence of either one of us makes people uncomfortable is nothing short of just heartbreaking sometimes. But, people really do feel that way and it's sad. It really is.
Hmm.
But prepping for it, knowing what to do, and then having like a very good, strong, supportive group of people, not only like to, catch you there, to vent, but also that know what to do. Because
Hmm.
I feel like for a lot of people, especially newer content creators, it's very easy to panic. We may make mistakes, etc. But if you want to talk with somebody that has, the knowledge on it, I'm definitely down for it. I try to help as many new content creators as possible. In fact, one of my viewers just told me that they were thinking about streaming. And I was like, there's a lot of nuances to streaming and stuff like that. But if you want me to check out, stream quality, if you want me to help you set up any sort of moderation, whether it be for Twitch, Discord, or any other platform, I'm willing to do it because I know it's not easy. But I also know that there's a lot of people out there that will gatekeep knowledge, but I definitely won't be one of them.
Right.
I want to see everybody succeed, especially if they're a marginalized content creator, because I know how easy it cannot be from
Right.
my own experience.
Of course. So, to get into some lighter stuff, we have, like I said, we have some questions from the community that I pulled from both Twitter and YouTube. So the first one comes to us from Phantom. They had two questions, but I figured I'd pick the one that sounded a little bit more interesting to talk about, especially
Mhm.
since it just happened. They asked, "What do you think of the new Killer the Unknown, strength wise, and where do you put them at if you were to make a tier list for them?"
Honestly, I would say the Unknown is probably one of my newer favorite killers to go against. Like, absolutely. I think that the Unknown has amazing chase potential, like constant nonstop chase potential, and it's very interactive. And that's something that I feel like we're not really used to seeing, a bunch of like nonstop survivor slash killer interaction. And also some mechanical skill. I'm sure you've seen in some of your gameplay against them. Some Unknown players do go for good trick shots.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do go for like some good snipes as the Unknown, and people do get crafty with it. Love
Mm-hmm.
seeing it. I love the chases every single time. I have fun, and because I'm like genuinely getting outplayed, it feels amazing. Like it really does. I think they did a great job with that character across the board. In terms of strength, I would easily put them at about a B tier if you can really get their mechanics down pat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think overall, very solid design. Very, very solid.
Okay. Sheriff asks, do you think that solutions they've been adding, like anti-3 gen, anti-face camp, and anti-tunneling perks, hinder and remove the fun from playing Killer, especially with the fact it's a 1 versus 4 with all of these restrictions?
I'm gonna go ahead and say no, because when I first started out playing the game, although I don't play a lot of Killer right now, if I wanted to hop on Killer and do good, I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Like, I think there's a lot of nuances to Killer that people don't realize, and I think a lot of people will make mistakes that they don't even realize. And a lot of them are very small, yes, but when you make them over and over again, it is very easy to sit there and ruin a whole game like that.
Oh,
And
100%.
I know sometimes it's hard to accept those kinds of things, but very rarely do I watch some Killer gameplay back where somebody loses and I think to myself, well, there's absolutely nothing they could have done there, you know?
Right.
I actually do try to review a lot of Killer gameplay because even though I play Survivor myself and, you know, stream it the majority of the time myself, I sometimes watch some Killer streams. Like sometimes, quite literally, I will just go through the directory, a streamer I don't even follow, don't watch, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of get like an average feel on, you know, how are these people perceiving Killer? You know, what are people thinking? What are people saying? And I notice a lot of people make just very basic mistakes. And I feel like it's very easy to make said mistakes because you get flustered. And when you get flustered, you're more likely to make those mistakes. And then it's easier to like pin it on something else a lot of the time. Like,
Right.
for example, one of the very simple things that I see people do a lot in Killer gameplay, I've noticed across the board, people just don't kick pallets. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people will try to like actively play around a pallet, but that is probably one of the biggest mistakes that you can make.
Yep.
It costs so much time, especially when the survivor is also equally mind gaming you. I myself, as a survivor, do it all the time. Like, for example, if the pallet is downed, even if I don't have Kim Trap, the killer will end up chasing me there for like a minute. And then I can also chain it with whatever window or other tile is nearby and absolutely ruin the momentum of the game for them because they're so stubborn and they think, oh, well, I'm so close to getting them. I might as well keep going.
Right.
And before you know it, other gens pop and then other survivors have also spread out to other gens. Like, and it's okay to admit at the very start of the game, killer is the weakest and survivor is the strongest. But as the match progresses, survivors get weaker because, you know, more resources are being ate up. But that's only if you're also contributing by kicking those pallets and
Right.
also actively seeking out to destroy some of their materials and resources. But a lot of killers don't really do that.
Yeah. And I
Um,
actually, oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was
I
just
just feel like I'm yapping. I'm yapping.
No, I yap too. Don't feel bad. I was gonna say that I actually like fully agree. Like I don't because like they put the solutions in quotes, but they said adding anti 3 gen. Okay, the reason that was done was because matches were being for going on for too long. But to compensate, they also got rid of gen tapping, which I think was one of the best decisions they've ever made. I hated gen tapping. The
Hmm.
anti face camp was incredibly important because it's just not fun to get face camped. But then they compensated that by turning it off in the end game because sometimes you have to face camp in the end game.
I mean, there's
Uh,
nothing left to do in game, so I completely understand turning it off. And I
yeah.
think it's like part of the risk reward, trying to, what do you call it? Coordinate a good team save and whatnot, which
Hmm.
is it makes it more risky. Like I do like risky plays. I
Right.
do.
Exactly. And then the last thing they said was all the anti-tunneling perks, which I'll be real, I don't know what they're talking about because I can think of three: DS, Off the Record, and Dead Hard. Maybe Wicked if you
Hmm.
want to go that far. They're buffing DS, which may or may not be a good thing. We'll have to see because this is being recorded before the PTB.
Hmm.
This video will go live Wednesday, which is after
Got
the
it.
PTB, but
Got
this is
it.
being recorded on the Saturday for people watching on the YouTube. So we don't know about that yet. But I don't think any of those have removed the fun from Killer. I think Killer's still fun. I enjoy Billy whenever his hitbox isn't
Um,
fucking me.
I'm gonna be honest, like again, like even in my killer gameplay, I've gone against survivors that I've also known as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done pretty decent against them. But I've also gone against other gamers that have anywhere between like 4 to 6,000 hours, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say like the general like just a lot of the juicer players, quite oftentimes I've noticed they kind of just throw for, clips or,
Mm-hmm.
plays. But the ones that are like hyper efficient, it can be annoying, but it can still be counterable. It just means like you have to play, more boring. But I personally think that killer is boring, not because like I can't hurry up and get a kill and tunnel for it,
Right.
or because of second chance perks. It's more so because survivors a lot of the time are more immersed and don't really care to get chased. It's
Yeah.
more like it's more efficient to just get on a gen and immerse and then escape.
You missed.
Like
We were having an intense. I was having an intense rant about distortion earlier, because I had two games back to back where distortion was in play, and I literally could not find either distortion user until the very last part. And one game, because of distortion, one game was extended like 10 plus minutes for no fucking reason because I just could not find them, and they refused to touch gens. And I was like, God damn it. I'm so
and
bored.
that's also something that's like really interesting to think about because I really do not like whenever I use distortion, 9 times out of 10, I'm using it not because I don't want to be chased or anything. It's because I want to try to like figure out the killer's build. I run like a very good variety of builds, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I use distortion to kind of figure out the killer's build, and then if needed, I will take aggro, of course, when I notice, hey, I noticed that these two people are already on death hook and we're at about like 2 or 3 gens. I'm gonna go take aggro forcibly, and the killer won't even see it coming because I have distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I enjoy running distortion just to figure out the killer's build. I don't really try to immerse with it or anything else.
Right.
But I do notice in some of my solo queue games, my teammates that don't do anything oftentimes are literally running Calm Spirit Windows distortion fixated.
Yeah.
Like I notice that a lot. I think the good solution that we could have from that though is if a survivor has not interacted with, an objective or a secondary objective, maybe they could also end up getting crows as well.
Yeah.
But that would have to be done in such like a unique way to not make it so that the people that are ratting for flashlight saves get outed just because, that
I
kind of thing.
yeah, I always felt like they just need to nerf the token gain. Like instead of getting tokens back for just existing in the killer's terror radius, maybe tie it to gens or saves or something like that.
I
Um
could see I could see getting added for chase.
yeah,
Like chase would make
yeah.
it so much better
Yeah, and
because
that would be
I'd love to
amazing
take a
actually.
chase.
That would be
Like
amazing. Like you get a token back for what, say 15 seconds in chase or something like that. 15
you know
20
what?
seconds.
I would love that. And it's so funny too because I remember for a really long time I was like, oh my god, distortion needs a fucking buff. And now that I see like a lot of the immersed gamers, whether I'm playing killer or solo queue, I think to myself, man, why can't you guys just use it the way that I use it and try to
Yeah.
like dismantle my aura build or something? Like,
Yeah.
why do you need to like sit on the edge of the killer's chair radius
And
with
like and like
distortion?
and every time you find them as killer, they go down in seconds, and you're like, you're going down in seconds because you're crouched in a corner. Please, for the love of God, please
No,
learn.
exactly. And like I said, a lot of people, I don't even think it's the fact that people don't necessarily like want or like hate chase or whatever. I just think there's no incentive for like being good at chase right now. Like the overarching theme of DBD is literally just gens, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And that's what kind of like sucks, I
Yeah.
would say, if I'm being honest.
Yep. Slava Jury asks, what is your biggest single issue with the patch 6.1, which I think was the overhaul, perk overhaul? I wasn't playing at the time.
6.1 was the bane of my existence, and I will die on this hill. I've always talked about it.
So they want to know what your biggest issue with it is, and what would you do to address it for modern Dead by Daylight?
I think 6.1 quite literally was the pipeline into them making DVD as linear as possible. I've talked about this many times before. As much as I love, wanting to help newer players, etc., way too many changes introduced. We had one PTB and not much was tweaked from it from that point. Again, I also understand that let me like list it off. Like I guess I could also understand, wanting killers to be more of the power role, but given how massive the community is, the amount of good players and the amount of bad players on both sides equaled out relatively so. Because the kill and escape rates were about equal before 6.1 and skill-based matchmaking, which were around the same time actually were introduced. And so for me, I feel like it was a little unnecessary, of course. But on top of that, it also really sucked because a lot of playstyles were also kind of killed off with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed one of them, Sabo Breakout, I could do it in solo queue, no problem, at least once or twice. But after 6.1, because survivors didn't make it nearly as far, but also killers recovered from hits 10% quicker, it made it so that solo queue breakout Sabo just kind of wasn't really working anymore. But I
Oh,
also
is
know,
that where they recover from hits faster?
Mhm,
Oh
yeah,
my
it was
God. I
basically like 2 stacks of Stabiffle base kit, but then they also didn't change Stabiffle to be in line with that. Neither did they change Brutal Strength or anything else that affects kicking speeds, etc.
Okay. I have no idea what 6.1 is about. I wasn't playing back then. No,
I can tell you everything off the top of my head.
the
Ooh,
reason I kind of perked up like that was because I was actually talking with Bran, the Mr. Headache. I don't know if you know him.
oh no, I
Um
know.
I love Bran. He's like my closest friend in the Dead by Daylight space. We're actually gonna raid him after we're done with this. But so I was talking with him and I was like, it's I feel like the hit the hit cooldown for killers is too fast. And I say that like as a killer main. Like so earlier today I was playing Survivor and
Mhm.
I spun a ghost face like 3 times in a row and I still didn't make it to a pallet that was right there because he
They
just
also made it so that Bloodlust was buffed. The second and third tier of Bloodlust was buffed, and they also made it so that even if a killer whiffs, they do not use Bloodlust. So that's probably why.
see I think that tier 2 and tier 3 of Bloodlust just need to go away. I think tier 1 is fine. Tier 2 and tier 3 is just all they are to in my opinion is indicators that you've been in chase too long.
Yeah, I know, but they buffed both by 10 seconds each. And again, to me, that was kind of odd because you shouldn't be rewarded for having like very long chases.
Mhm.
And I do understand that, map design is a little poor at some points, but they have shown that they can revisit multiple maps at a time.
Yeah.
They've done that with Macmillan. I don't know if you know, but they introduced additional variants for each Macmillan map.
Mhm.
But they've also gone through and tweaked Haddonfield again in this upcoming PTB. They've also tweaked Coldwind again. They introduced new tiles on all of Macmillan maps as well.
Yep.
And then, they've also gone back and touched up Auto Haven as well,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So they have shown that they are, available to
Right.
change maps so that it's not that big of a pain point anymore. And if they are actively working on those things, I'm not entirely sure what the point of Bloodlust 1 would even be. I would argue for 1 to stay, so long as places like Garden of Joy or Haddonfield are still in the game. But if those are fixed in the future, Tier 1 could probably go as well. All it does is make people feel like they can, spend extra time on a survivor, and then again, they lose the chase eventually, but at the cost of gens, and they feel like, okay, well, I've got a tunnel and I've got a camp to make up for it,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like a never-ending cycle, that kind of thing. And again, I do think that some killers absolutely did deserve buffs, but general buffs across the board, probably not the smart idea, because it makes, S tier killers even better. And then it buffs up the lower tiers, of course, but again, they all still have specific issues that need fixing too.
Right. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I'm thinking about making a video on it, especially after watching. I don't know if you saw Otz's video on Decisive Strike that he posted today.
I did not get the chance to watch it yet, but I did get to look at his Twitter that I've been really busy this week.
Yeah. But there's been a lot of talk about bringing up certain killers should have certain seconds on DS. And I was like, I don't really like that idea because it requires the devs to tier list the killers, and that's not necessarily a good idea. But I was also thinking today that perhaps it's time for the developers to start looking at each killer individually for things that they get, like hit cooldowns and how often bloodlust comes up, and even things like pallet kick speeds and stuff. And it needs to start happening to killers individually instead of globally, because then we run into this problem where overly oppressive killers like Blight Spirit and Nurse get the exact same buffs as killers who desperately need those buffs, like Trapper, Freddy, and Myers. And that creates an unhealthy imbalance within the game that I feel like we probably do as a community need to talk to behavior about and address at some point.
Yeah, and like I said, that was my biggest gripe with 6.1. Of course killers needed a buff, because there was a lot of cheese in DBD back then, of course, but the problem is way too many things introduced, one PTB to test it, not much changed from it. And like you said, a lot of the killers that were already strong are even stronger now. And then on top of that, now we also have the lower tier killers. They do get, a good update, but some of them still have underlying issues that make them weak in some parts, which really sucks.
Right.
It's literally just not enough. Like, for example, Freddy right now is in a really bad spot. I think that he's in an okay/decent spot, but his add-ons could definitely use a lot of love. Twins are finally getting their rework despite coming out in 2020, which is also wild to think about. And even then, we haven't even tried out the PTB to see how good it actually is.
Right.
And so these kinds of things are very concerning. But I want to say that the direction that DBD is going, listening to the community more, awesome. However, it can be a little frustrating at times because it does feel like the game is becoming a little linear at times.
Streamline balancing is definitely something I've been talking about on my channel as well. It's a lot of times the game feels like it's being a tad too streamlined, like with the mangled nerfs that happened recently. It's like, oh, so we're just moving toward gen regression slowdown builds instead of finding alternative play styles to try to have more fun. I don't like, I actively despise the mangled nerf that they came out. That is one of my most hated changes they've done since I've started playing the game.
I don't know. It just feels like we're continuously moving in a circle over and over again, where they introduce a band-aid fix and then something else comes up and then another band-aid fix can be implemented, blah blah blah. But I do think that behavior would really benefit in DBD if they did a health update. And I know a lot of people, the first thought is, okay, well, no, people are going to get bored and people are going to leave. Yeah, but every 3 months new content being introduced, but a lot of the game breaking bugs, like recently we just had Plague, Oni, and a number of other perks bugged
Mhm.
like Merciless Storm again. And the kill switch feature was not activated for some of those things, which is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I actually recently did a video called "The Health and Horror," the chapter that Dead by Daylight needs, and my suggestion was that it should come during the anniversary event, but not only should it be like an overhaul, it's like bug fixes and stuff like that, but it should also be like updates to outdated mores and animations and updates to outdated graphics. But it could also be the rework patch where they introduce, you know, like, oh, Freddy, Myers, and Trapper all need massive buffs and reworks and overhauls. They could do that all in the same patch. And then you don't have to
Mhm.
worry about us not getting quote unquote new content, because in the exact same patch they did the health update, they also introduced new toys for everybody to play with. Is the way
Yeah.
I would personally do it. I also think that a new character every 3 months is getting to be a little bit much. I-
Yeah, because when you think about like, the standard for DVD in a new chapter, it's typically killer, survivor, map. Although they have been like, lacking on the maps a little bit more,
Mhm.
each of those characters will also have 3 perks. And some of the killers may introduce, or survivors may introduce a new mechanic. Like, for example, a new type of perk, Invocation, has come with Sable Ward.
Mhm.
But we also have new mechanics introduced, and you've got to learn how to play as and against them for
Yeah.
killer, and so it would take a lot, to keep up with it if it's every 3 months. And like I said, I think it's already a little bit much at times, and so a health update is desperately needed for DBD.
Yep.
And of course, I love behavior, I love DBD, but I also want it to be around for a lot longer as well,
I
you
agree.
know and so this is something I feel like is a must for them.
Yep. Some dude in a box asks, "What's one crossover you'd love to see happen in Dead by Daylight?"
Absolutely Tomb Raider. I am a huge diehard fan of Tomb Raider. I've loved Tomb Raider since I was a little girl. I think Tomb Raider, although like it is more action adventure, it does absolutely have some horror elements to it.
Hmm.
The series itself has been rebooted more than a couple of times, and there are some iterations of it and eras that absolutely can fit into horror. I
Right.
mean, but even then, who am I one to talk? We literally have Nicolas Cage in the game, so.
Yeah, yeah. I love how as Dead by Daylight content creators, we get asked that question so much, we just have our answer just right there. Like mine's Scooby Doo. I want Scooby Doo cosmetics.
Oh God, that'd be amazing.
I actually have been working on a short video just going over like how I would like my dream implementation of Scooby Doo cosmetics, how I'd want to do it. So yeah, my whenever someone asks me that, I'm like Scooby Doo. I don't want characters. I just want a cosmetic collection based off Scooby Doo. They could do so much with that. Stu Rat asks, "What got you into gaming content creation?" Which I think I actually asked earlier. So we'll go. What got you into gaming?
In general, my dad got me into gaming. Growing up, my dad took good care of me, and I remember we actually used to have this little like these games that you could rent or buy or
Hmm.
whatever, with I believe it's DirecTV cable subscription.
Hmm.
So I just started playing games like that. But my dad was also a little bit of a gamer too. My dad just liked technology and stuff. My dad is a lot older, and so he has some years on him. My dad is about 69 years old, but I'm 23, 24 in a few weeks. And so there's quite a bit of an age gap. And so when my dad, had technology walk into his life, oh, he loved it, you
Hmm.
know? And so him introducing video games to me was really cool. And he also gave me like a PlayStation 2. I don't know. I love video games.
Yeah.
And, it was something that my dad, knew that I appreciated. And so he would buy me different games and whatnot and say, hey, well, here, try this, that kind of thing. And he always supported like my gaming as a hobby.
Right.
But I gotta say, the funniest thing is my dad used to give me an allowance every week when I was growing up as a teenager.
Hmm.
And of course, as a kid, I was like, okay, well, it's the weekend. I'm out of school, finish my homework. Dad, let's go to GameStop.
Yeah.
I would spend all my money on games. And every single time he would call me downstairs, Lily, I've told you about this so many times. All your allowance going on video games and whatnot. I'm trying to teach you about the responsibility of saving. And you're over here spending money on video games. And
That's
now, that's literally my full-time
yeah.
job.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my dad would have been 69. So our dads would have been the same age. My dad would have
Mm-hmm.
never stopped making jokes about being 69, but
Oh, that's adorable.
yeah, no, I said that on his birthday. His birthday was in December.
Mm.
And I made the post in December. I said you would have been 69 this year and you would have never shut the fuck up about it for the entire year. Yes. My dad is a big part of the reason my humor is the way it is. Um, so yeah, it's that's actually funny. Our dads are the same age, but you and I are 7 years apart. I'm gonna be
Oh
30.
wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 31 in August.
Okay, awesome, awesome.
Next up, so two people, Sunlight Cove and Ryan Gesture, actually asked pretty much the same question, just in kind of like different ways. So the basis of the question is, if you were added into Dead by Daylight as a character, what would your perks be? Who do you think the killer would be? And what would be the name of your chapter?
Ooh, if I'm being honest, I would love to have like if I had the ability to have a character DBD or like maybe like a mimic of myself. I think it would be cool to have very aggressive perks, but also, I don't know. I would love something like very horror-esque, like in the sense of Dredge,
Hmm.
like a manifestation of like, I don't know. I guess you could say trauma and whatnot. I mean, I have PTSD if I'm being honest. You know,
Yeah.
I do like I'm very open about mental health. Like I do suffer from like anxiety, PTSD, depression, and whatnot. And so having a monster to like mimic that would definitely fit like the horror element. And because it's like a manifestation of it, it would be really interesting to see what the design would look like, you know. And I do think that Dredge's design, the unknown's design, like body horror and whatnot, is so much more appealing
Oh yeah.
for a theme of horror and so much
Hmm.
scarier too,
It
you know.
it so is. When I first came to this game, one of my biggest criticisms was that almost every single killer in the game was just a dude with a knife.
Yeah, like very humanoid.
When I found the Dredge is actually my favorite killer in the game, like conceptually, because I just love
Hmm.
the idea of monsters. And then when they released the Singularity, I was like, yes. Then when they released the Unknown, I was like, yes. I was like, finally, we're getting some fucking monsters in this motherfucking game, dude.
No,
Like,
exactly, exactly. That's something that was like very brilliant to me. And I think that the concept of Dredge, but also the unknown, absolutely nailed.
hmm,
Love, love, love it.
yeah, they did a
Um,
fantastic job.
but I think I would like to have like more aggressive perks in DBD, more crafty ways to like stun the killer and whatnot.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, I could definitely see like a landmine perk or something, you know, put it at like a choke point and whatnot, and the killer may like have to avoid it. Recently, my fixation for perks, the combo's been any means necessary, chemical trap, and what is it? Champion of light. And so when they get hit by the pallet, they're stunned, and then they have to make the choice between kicking with Chem Trap to slow them down, but also Champion of Light to further hinder them.
Hmm.
It's a goaded perk combo. Love, love, love it. But I also love Smash Hit and Parental Guidance. You get rewarded for successfully pallet stunning the killer,
Yeah.
and you get to zoom away,
Oh
and you
yeah.
have no scratch marks from Parental Guidance, which is amazing. And so love, love, love having that kind of idea in my head for, you know, additional perks.
I could see a proximity mine perk acting very similar to the Steam things on Nostramu.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually watching a Vidius right now, and she just had a team that activated those. Never see those get used a lot. So,
um do you know what they would name the chapter if they made one after you?
hmm. Trying to let me think about it for a second. Let me think about it. Let me think. Let me see. Mm, I feel like I feel like I don't know. Fate of the Realms. I don't know, because I feel like, you know, given my history and whatnot in my past, there's so many different things that I think and feel, and like through different eras of my life, I feel like I've learned something incredibly incredibly important from each one. And so each era of my life I could feel, a realm. And like, I guess the chapter of that would probably be exploring, the fate of each one of those realms or the fate of my eras, you know,
Hmm.
and see like what it's made me into today, or as a survivor rather. I think that's a pretty cool concept.
Okay. No, I actually like that idea. I had a viewer make a killer concept out of me a while back. And their name for the chapter was something like comedians gone crazy or something like that. It was so funny. I loved it. They went all out. Like they did like a fucking like 13-page Google Doc. It was so cool to witness.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So, Salace, I know I butchered that, and I'm so sorry, friend. But they said that they recently watched your video on accessibility, which I meant to watch before this, but I got sidetracked.
Hmm.
And they were interested in your comments about Dredge. Now, Dredge mains
Hmm.
have suggested, and this is actually something even I've suggested, even as a deaf person, that the sounds within Nightfall need to be like brought down, as well as like all of the locker bangs and shit.
Hmm.
But they asked, how would you buff, nerf, or balance the Dredge?
Hmm. I think nothing. I can't really think of like an actual nerf that I really want for Dredge, other than when he TPs, it almost feels like he can immediately swing, and I don't know. I'm just not a fan of that from like the survivor POV, but I feel like that's a very minor thing. But for like the vision purpose, like playing against Dredge does feel fun to me.
Hmm.
It's just I have really shitty vision. I really, really do. Um, one second.
No, you're fine. I've had to mute my mic a couple of times for that. I'm a couple.
Sorry.
No, you're
I'm
fine.
I'm so ready to yap.
Yeah, no, I
Like my mouth is ahead of me.
yeah, I get you. I get you.
But basically, I feel like for accessibility purposes, like playing against them, love it. But I have really bad vision.
Hmm.
You guys probably can't tell because I wear contacts the majority of the time, but when it comes to my actual vision, I can't see any further than like 12 inches away, like a literal foot. And then everything starts going extremely blurry.
Hmm.
But I also have very bad light sensitivity.
Oh, I do too.
And
Holy shit.
yeah, yeah. And so trying to like drive in the dark or like trying to like navigate in the dark and whatnot
Hmm.
really strains my eyes. Like it really, really affects me in real life, but it also affects me in the game. And it sometimes it gets so bad to the point where it kind of gives me like a slight headache because I have to focus so hard. And I really don't like that.
Yeah. I flashlights enrage me in Dead by Daylight because they physically hurt my eyes.
Yeah, if there
I
was a way they could tone that down, like the flash screen doesn't have to be so bright,
I
you
I
know?
I have made a suggestion for them to add a toggle that instead of doing all the lights and effects, it blackens the screen and then has a symbol on the screen that shows a timer of how long you're going to be blinded for. Um,
That would make so much more sense.
Oh, it would be a godsend because I swear to you, every time I get flashlight blinded in this game, my eye, my communities actually notice it. Whenever a flashlight or like a blast mine or something goes off or whatever, I've been turning my head away from the screen because I can't look at it. It's so
Hmm.
painful.
No,
But the
I get it completely.
Yeah. But the last question was actually it's a three-parter, and I normally don't include like all three parts, but it was so
Hmm.
for lack of a better word, creative. This comes from Alien Creative. So the three parts of their question is: do you still think the game is killer sided? Do you think the game is survivor or killer sided if you say no? And how would you balance killers powers, perks, and maps?
Hmm. That's a very loaded question. I love it. I love it. Um, I used to say that it was killer sided, but now I will happily say it is more efficient sided.
Hmm.
I feel like killer has more potential to do more damage, of course. Like, unless you're actively bringing the perks preemptively,
Right.
There's not really much that you can choose to do against tunneling and camping. Like, I know we have the anti-camp feature, but if somebody chooses to like sit outside of the zone, and some people absolutely have
Oh
perfected it.
my god. Wraith
Um,
players. Wraith players.
I mean, or they could just do the back to hook tech as well.
Yeah.
And if they hit you within like what the 10 seconds of borrowed time, it renders you off the record, your base get BT, but also any sort of like dead hard that you have,
Yep.
useless, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And if you're not like prepared for that, then yeah, you would probably end up dying. And like, I would say it's killer sided in that sense. They have the ability to do more damage, but if the killer doesn't choose to tunnel or anything, right?
Yeah.
And then I would say it's whoever's the most efficient. And the survivor equivalent, I guess, of that could easily be like if they were to split up on gens and then play immersed, which a lot of players do, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But again, I feel like it's two different sides to the same coin. Now, how could they balance that? Particularly, they asked about the killer side, adding core mechanics essentially to help people or dissuade people rather from tunneling and camping. But that for me is such a complex solution because I genuinely believe the reason why people do it is because one, it's encouraged by MMR. MMR quite literally is outlined for skill as, hey, if you get kills, you're skilled. If you get escapes, you're skilled.
Right.
But that's not necessarily true. I've had plenty of survivors, like I mentioned earlier in my games. They will run Windows, Calm Spirit, Distortion, and they will want to make sure that they don't take any sort of aggro, and they will wait until everybody else is dead and then try to get out, Yep. And MMR does reward that behavior, sadly. Instead of being a team player isn't really rewarded for MMR because it's all about escapes. Same end up the killer side. If somebody wants to really make it easy for them and boost their MMR, getting kills does it. And so maybe they won't pip as much, but a lot of people, once they hit a certain like level, they don't really care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just in general, they would rather sit there and make the game easier. And so doing a 3v1, it's the easiest thing to do. Like there's no real drawback from it. You make the game a 3v1 early on, and it makes your games infinitely easier. Yeah. It's a cheesy thing to do, but I mean, the option is there. So yeah, people are going to do it.
Oh, for sure.
And after I started to realize that, it made a lot of sense to me because a lot of the people that do that, I'm not saying it always goes hand in hand. Some people will do it just for like a streak, or some people would just do it because they just don't feel like trying that hard, even though they have the potential to.
Right.
But I do notice that a lot of the people that will rat as a survivor, when you finally do get the chance to chase them, they're not really that great at chase. And then when a killer that's been playing kind of cheesy, finally does encounter a survivor that actually can loop and whatnot, they're kind of not that great,
Yeah.
But again, I think getting rid of MMR or changing the conditions of MMR would greatly reduce that. But I don't even think changing MMR itself could do that. I think we'd have to get rid of it and put into a separate system, But the emblem system, although not perfect, I think could have been a little bit better. You got pips, and it encouraged you to do a little bit more well-rounded games and have a long-lasting game,
Yeah.
And I feel like that goes for both sides. Like as Survivor, the standard was typically 2 gens, 2 totems, 2 unhook/heals, and you could also throw in a little bit of chase. But now, like I said, there's not really an incentive to be good at chase or anything like that, or really display any sort of manner of skill. I feel like, again, the overarching theme is gens, and a lot of that is all thanks to MMR. But having a separate system for MMR that makes it known that, hey, this is what it's about, and this is what most people are going to go for, blah, 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 would be so much more beneficial. I feel like people wouldn't feel the need to sweat as much. I also feel like more people would relax when they're playing and, not preemptively try to out-cheese the other side, because most people are playing for efficiency due to MMR. But I just don't think that's something that behavior would necessarily go back on. I feel like what Ott said once behavior kind of has an idea in mind on how they want to do things, they're probably going to go through with it,
Yeah.
you know? And given how they've even said themselves, you know, they want killer to be the power role, which again, there's nothing wrong with that in particular. Kind of odd given that it is an asim, quite literally the name, asymmetrical, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like DBD was fun with cheese on both sides. Looking back, I used to get mad when I would get like, you know, first took Moried or when somebody would unhook me without BT and whatnot. But the games were like a lot less punishing for it, you know?
Right.
And I could just get to my next match relatively simple and then encounter a completely different vibe. Whereas it kind of just feels like some of my matches can blend together unless I force them to not blend together. Which is I don't know, it's kind of like an odd thing to say, but a lot of DBD is kind of like what you really make it. And I feel like it could be so much more than just that. Do I still enjoy DBD? Absolutely. But I'm not gonna lie, because I love the game and because I know what potential DBD can or has had before, I know that they can do it again. But it would take a lot of community effort and support and listening on behavior's part.
Yeah. That is a very nuanced conversation that can sometimes
Yeah, it really is.
we could probably spend a couple more hours at the very least talking about all of the solutions and stuff like that. But the reason I saved that question for the last community question was because of the fact, like I said in the very beginning of this, when I first found you, I knew you as a Survivor main who thought the game was heavily killer sided. So I appreciate the new nuanced take that you give on because I believe that the game is in the most balanced state I've ever seen it. And from looking at like the history of the game, I feel like it's far more balanced between the two roles than it ever was.
No, absolutely, but balancing DBD, like I don't want them to balance like the fun out of it because it
Right.
does feel like a lot of the skill expression for killer has gone down, but same side for survivor as well. And I'm not talking about just like, you know, the cheese of like, oh, well, you know, lock or flashlight save until they quite literally run out of juice, you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. I'm talking about, you know, I notice a lot of the times I'm getting hit through pallets. I'm also like not having any sort of like flashlights, for example, have been changed so many times, to the point where they're like very buggy at times, admittedly.
Oh, this
Um,
game needs a massive coding and server overhaul.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And
This-
that's what can be a little frustrating, of
yeah.
course. But again, I think DBD like absolutely, you know, is in its most balanced state, but balance doesn't necessarily always mean fun. I feel like you really have to wedge in, you know, your own definition of fun.
Right.
But I think DBD could be a little bit more than that, and I know it can.
Well, Miss Lily, I think it's almost about time to let you go enjoy the rest of your night. I got two more questions for you. The first one is, what would you like to be the B roll? Which character would you like to be the B roll for your interview today? Like, which character would you like me to play in order to put that in the background?
Oh, can it be Claudette?
Yeah, absolutely. I will go run an hour and a half worth of Claudette games. And and finally, is there anything that you have left to say to everybody out there watching either in stream or on YouTube right now?
In all honesty, I feel like the DBD community, I feel like a lot of the times conversations leave people and each other like neck and neck and like a little tilted at times. But remember, like we all share a common denominator. Hopefully, we're all human. And we should be able to like relate to each other on the level of being a human. We're people with feelings, you know? And so I want people to really think about that the next time they really try to insult somebody or really belittle somebody over a game of DBD, you know? Like I
Right.
know it's very easy to get tilted over DBD. Like I still do it myself, but you know, make a joke out of it. Like laugh a little, you know, open up your mind to like different perspectives, even if you don't agree with somebody, you
Yep.
know. I feel like the DBD community really, really needs that. Even if you don't agree or even if you don't like somebody. Like when it comes to me not liking somebody, it has to be for more than just a DBD opinion, you know,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
I feel that. And if you want to join me in thanking our channel members for all their additional support, if you guys want to find out how to become a channel member today, then please click that join button down below. And especially look into the description to find all of Lily's socials linked down below. Make sure you guys go give her all the love you possibly can. I love you all so much. I will see you the next one. Y'all have a fantastic day. And bye, Miss Lily. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course, thank you, and like seriously, thank you for platforming a lot of the DBD creators, you know, both big and small. But also, I think the series is like a great addition to have in the conversation of DBD, because it doesn't always have to just be like balance or, you know, like, oh well, who's the best DBD player? You know, I think like a lot of the time we're forgetting there's one common denominator. You know, we're all bought together by DBD. You know,
Exactly.
we should relate to that on more of an often basis. But good luck in future with this series. I see it going far. So,
I appreciate you. Have a great night.
all right, you too.
Bye.